You're welcome to this short video, guys. So basically, we're going to be covering short questions on software testing. So if you are ever interested in a career as a software tester, you are in the right channel. This is the video that you don't want to miss. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to be sharing short videos with some questions about software testing that is mainly aimed at beginners and those that are just looking into starting out as a software tester or anyone that is just interested in that career field. So these are the basic questions that would help you. Okay. So first of all, and this video is going to be one of a few videos I'll be doing based on these basic questions in software testing. So let's begin. So the first question is, what is an SDLC, software development lifecycle, and types of it? So first of all, what you need to understand is in any software project, there's a development lifecycle that they follow. And what's a development lifecycle? It's basically a structure of activities that is carried out at different stages of the project. Okay, until that project has been completed. Okay, so you have the software development activities, you have the testing activities also going on. Okay, and there are two main types of software testing development lifecycle you need to be aware of. So first of all is a sequential lifecycle, development lifecycle, or sequential SDLC. That's where things are done in stages. So that will start from the requirement gathering stage. Then the next stage will be the development of that solution or software, and the final stage at a high level is testing. Okay, so things are done in sequence. So one activities needs to be carried out before the subsequent ones are completed or carried out. Okay, the next type of software development lifecycle is the iterative software development lifecycle. So what do I mean by iterative software development lifecycle? So basically, this is where things are built and done in chunks. So for example, I have a solution or software that I want to build. So maybe it's an e-commerce software. Okay, as you can imagine, e-commerce software can be very large, starting from the customer account feature to the actual shopping feature and to the actual checkout feature. So let's imagine that we're just starting out with the customer account creation, where a customer would have access to an account. They can create their own member accounts, and then from there they can manage their orders. They can do things like refunds or like a product and things like that. So let's say that's the first stage of the product that we're building. So that type of project, because it's done in chunks, so they're going to start with that stage first, then they move on to the shopping feature, then they move on to the checkout feature. So let's say we're starting off with this customer account feature. So now what we want to do is we're going to iterate that process. So that small chunk itself it will be done within a specific iteration. So that would normally be the first iteration. Okay, so once that is built, we now run some tests around it, and then once that is checked out and completed and released to the live environment, then we move on to the iteration 2 and then subsequently to 3 and so forth. So that's the difference between the sequential and the iterative software development lifecycle. Okay, is the order in the way things are done. So the sequential life cycle, things are done in stages. So development is carried out, followed by testing, and prior to development, you have the requirement gathering stage. Okay, and then with this iterative life cycle, you have the build, design, test, which is also carried out. But in most cases, that is done in collation, or so it's done in correlation or in parallel with testing as well, because it's more collaborative. Okay, so each team are working closely together to build, test, and release that feature into the live environment, and the turnaround is normally quicker. Okay, with the iterative software development lifecycle. Okay, and it's the modern way of building of software or carrying out a software project nowadays. Okay, then question number 2, when do we start testing? To be honest with you, testing starts immediately. The moment that we're briefed about what the project is all about, and we understand the objective of the project, we understand the features of the product and what we're trying to achieve or what they're trying to build, software testing starts from that stage. Now, there are two different types of tests you need to be aware of. We have the static testing and we have the dynamic testing. So what's the difference between both? So the static test, we don't actually execute any code. We don't run any code. So static test, what we do with at this stage are all the work products. So what do I mean by work products? So work products are all the documentation related to that software project or that feature. Okay, so if there's a design document, if there's a technical document, if there's a requirement, or if there's a user story, we start to analyze those documents, review it from a tester's perspective or user's perspective, so we understand what is being built, and then we also find issues at that stage. We start finding bugs right from that onset. Okay, so anything we find within this documentation, it could be documentation, it could even be just a diagram of what we're building. Okay, it could be a flow chart. Okay, so we'll question everything at this stage. So if there's any abnormality, if there's any spelling errors or anything that lacks clarity, we will raise it as a tester. Because guess what? That actually saves a lot of time and money when these issues are ironed out before they now become a full solution that is built into the software. Okay, so that's our static test. Then we now have the dynamic test. The dynamic test is normally carried out at the end of the development stage. Okay, so once the developers have built their solution, they'll ship it to the testing environment. Then we carry out dynamic test. And what's the difference? With dynamic test, would execute the code. Okay, would actually run our test data. So let's say, for example, the feature is supposed to assign a certain number of uh, of points based on how much interaction the users carried out on a specific area of the product. So we actually create data to kind of mimic that interaction, and then we'll now feed that through the system by actually running our test. Okay, so that's at that stage we're exercising the code. We're basically saying if a user does interaction A, B, and C, these are the expected results I expect from the system or from the solution. Okay, so dynamic testing, we're exercising the code. So if the code logically is supposed to do A, B, C, and D, we're checking that those logics are all exercised and working as expected. But from a tester's perspective, we're not only interested in it working as expected. A tester is always trying to find bugs, so it's always good to keep that mindset. Okay, so question number 3: what is a test process? So test process are those sets of activities carried out within a test project or test phase. So what do I mean by that? So for example, we have a project we're starting now, and then it's now been assigned to the testing. So all the activities that are carried out from the beginning of that testing to the very end is the test process. So how do we actually break this down? Okay, so to simplify it, we have the test planning activity. So test planning activity is actually when we actually describe on a high level what we'll be testing. What are those features that are within scope of our test? The features that are outside scope of our test. What is the timeline to carry out our testing? Okay, what are the resources we have in place? Be the test environment, be the testers itself. Okay, and then also what are the types of test strategy we would actually implement to carry out that testing. Okay, so that's the test planning, and then we have the test analysis. So this is where we actually review all the work products. Remember, work products are all those documentation that is specific to that software project. So it could be the design, the requirement. Okay, it could be questionnaire from the users. So whatever documentation we have in place, we're going to carry out test analysis, okay, to understand, okay, at a high level, what are we really testing? What are those features that are in scope? How to actually derive our test cases or test scope within these documentations. That's where test analysis come in. Then we actually break that down further into test design. So that's where we actually start creating our test conditions. Okay, so if you're not very sure of what a test condition is, I have a video on test condition and test cases. Please watch that video to learn more about that. And then once we've done that, then we have the test execution. So that's when we actually So we have this before test execution, we have test implementation. So all these tests that we've written, all the test data, all the test cases we've written, we now have a test implementation activity. So this will ensure that things like the test environment is up to date, has the correct stubs in place and settings in place to enable our testing to be effective and to run without any issues. This is where we carry out things like smoke testing to ensure that the test environment is ready for testing. And this is also where we carry out things like ensure that all of our scripts that we're going to run or test cases are ready and the associated test data are also in place. Then lastly, and then we have the test execution. Apologies. So this is when we actually run all of these tests based on the order that we've specified while creating our test design stage test cases. While creating those test cases, we would have had an idea of the order we're going to run our tests. If you don't know much about risk-based testing, I advise you watch a video of mine on risk-based testing to give you more information about it. And then once we execute our test cases, then it's test reporting, where we gather our test results and we raise our bugs or test reports and then retest and then close that bug. Okay, so that's the high level overview of a test process. Then what is a test plan? I think I've already mentioned a test plan as part of question number 3, which is a high level documentation of what we're going to cover in our testing. And a test plan is actually used to monitor and guide our testing all throughout that particular project. Okay, then lastly, what is the purpose of a test metric? So for example, when you're doing something, you need to be able to track what you're doing, and that's where test metric comes in. So test metric itself is mainly like a test update report. Okay, it's manually created sometimes, and sometimes it's created using a test tool. So basically, what it does is capture at each point the status of the test you're running, whether the test is going as planned or whether there are any issues found in testing that has affected the pace of our test, and whether there are any high priority issues that need to be raised with the relevant departments to be able to continue with our testing. All this information I gather within a test metric is as simple as having like a spreadsheet to say, oh, we have X number of test cases we've run, and for those test cases we have X number of passed tests and also have X number of failed tests. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, and normally they're in form of a chart, so it could be a bar chart, and normally they're color coded, that kind of stuff. So these are manually created, or sometimes they would use a tool, a test tool, like a test execution or test management tool to create this. And the whole point of it is so that we have that data to share with the business, because when you're running a project, there's normally a weekly update on how each department is getting on with their scope of work. So the tester or the test manager in this instance has to provide regular updates to the stakeholders, who are like the project sponsors, the project managers, the business representatives, the developers, or the development manager on the status of our testing. So this is where the test metric comes in, because it feeds the test lead or test manager all the information they need to know regarding how the testing is going. So they'll share this with their other cross team members. I hope we've learned one or two from these short videos. This is going to be one of a series of a few more videos on short questions on software testing. I feel like these short questions are very important to prepare you if you're new to software testing and maybe you're planning to start out in the industry. It's good to understand what all these basics actually mean, or maybe you're preparing for your first interview as a software tester. I believe these short videos will also be very helpful. I also provide training in software testing, foundation level training, which is the certified tester training, or if you're interested in a project-based training in software testing, then you can also register for this on my website at www.learnsoftwaretestng.com. All right, and if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and be part of our community. Thank you so much. Bye for now.